This video is brought to you by AKS IAS.
Good morning, sir and dear students. We are fortunate to have Rajarshi Varma sir today with us. Sir is an IPS officer 2017 batch Rajasthan cadre and currently working as an ASP and he's under training. Sir is also UPSC topper. Today, sir is going to speak about holistic preparation strategy for civil services examination. We from AKS IAS heartfully welcome you to this webinar, sir. You can start the class, sir.
Thanks a lot. So what I'll do is I have a presentation with regard to preparation for civil services. I'll be speaking as per the presentation. In between, if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat box, and we can also take the questions after the presentation. So I'll just share the presentation. Okay. So as was told in the introduction, I belong to the Indian Police Service from 2017 batch, and right now I'm holding the position of ASP under training. And before the Indian Police Service, I was in the Indian Audit and Account Service, 2014 batch, where I worked for 3 years. So let us start with the presentation. Okay, so this is the broad agenda of today's session. The first thing that I'm going to discuss is getting into the right frame of mind. That is, how do you mentally prepare yourself for this examination, which is the most important part. Thereafter, step by step, I'll discuss about the 3 stages of the examination: prelims, main examination, and personality test for the interview. So the first thing, getting in the right frame of mind. Now, as you might have heard, and many people say that UPSC is considered to be one of the toughest examination, one of the most competitive examinations in the world, not just in the country. And what distinguishes this examination from other examinations, say an IIT entrance exam or IIMs, etc., is that this exam is more a test of your attitude, your consistency, your mental strength and patience, and not pure knowledge or intelligence. I have seen much more intelligent people than me, much more knowledgeable people than me not getting in the services, not getting through the exam because of their attitude. And I've also seen much less intelligent people or much less knowledgeable people than me getting in the services, again because of their attitude. So attitude matters a lot. Again, one of the most distinguishing features of this examination is the grueling and the time-consuming process of this examination. The examination process only takes one entire year. So you have prelims in the month of, say, May, June, you have mains in the month of October, November, and then interview in the month of March, April. So the examination process takes 1 year, and for preparing for the examination, you need at least 1 full year. So even if you, like in the best case scenario, even if you crack the examination in your first attempt, you need to devote 2 whole years of your life. And 2 years is a huge time. So it is very important to stay motivated throughout these 2 years. Again, you have to be internally motivated for this examination. If you're giving this examination because your parents want you to give the examination or because your friends are preparing for this examination, you won't be able to sustain that internal motivation. So for the motivation to be sustainable, you need to have an inner drive. You need to have a clear reason as to why you want to give this examination, why you want to join the civil services. Till the time that reason is clear, till the time you know inside your heart, till the time you know inside your conscience why you are giving this examination, what is your long-term vision, what you want to achieve in your life, okay, you'll be able to internally motivate yourself. Of course, there would be ups and downs, because 2 years, I said, is a very long time. So there would be times when you would feel low. There would be times when you will feel demotivated. There would be times when you feel, what am I doing with my life? Okay, because again, for preparing for this examination, you'll have to make umpteen number of small and big sacrifices every day, every single day. So I remember when I used to prepare, there were days when I could not meet my friends during weekends. I could not go out to watch a movie, or I could not attend my friends' weddings. Okay, I could not celebrate festivals with my family members. So these are the sacrifices which you'll have to make. And if you do not have an inner drive, if you do not have an internal motivation, you won't be able to make those sacrifices. Okay. So one important part of remaining internally motivated to sustain that inner drive is to have a clear unwinding strategy. Unwinding strategy means basically you need to know what relaxes you. You need to know what rejuvenates you. Again, it's a very individual thing. For different people, it would be different. Okay, for like some people might unwind by watching a movie. Some people might unwind by watching a Netflix series, or by playing, or by going to the gym, or by running. Again, you need to know yourself. In this examination, the preparation for this examination is a very good opportunity to know oneself. Okay, inside out. So you need to know what relaxes you, what rejuvenates you, and basically you don't need to like study for 10-15 hours. Many people might tell you that you have to study for 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours every single day. See, that is not humanly possible. For like to do that is not humanly possible for 2 continuous years. So even if you're studying for 7-8 hours per day consistently every day, okay, that is more than enough. Again, the key word, the operating word is consistency. Consistency is most important. Okay. Another important characteristic of this examination is unpredictability. Okay, so around 10 lakh people apply for this exam. Okay, and they are competing for around 700 to 800 seats. So given the level of competition, you can never be certain whether you'll be able to crack this examination or not. Even the toppers, even the first rank or the top 10 rank holders do not know after giving the exam whether they are going to qualify the exam or not. In fact, there have been times when I thought that my paper went well, but I got less marks. And there were times when I thought that my paper did not go that well and I scored more marks. Such is the unpredictability of this exam, especially the main examination or the interview part. Okay, so you need to stop thinking about the results. Because if you keep on thinking about the result every single day of the preparation, your performance is going to be adversely affected. So you have to focus on the journey. You have to take each day as a learning process. You have to wake up every day and you have to think. You have to tell yourself, okay, what new am I going to learn today? If you have that kind of attitude, if you have that kind of sort of learning zeal and enthusiasm, okay, every day then would be enjoyable. Otherwise, every day would become miserable. Every day you will think that if you take this entire process as a burden, every day you will wake up and think, अच्छा आज फिर से पढ़ना है, ये पढ़ना है और आज फिर से classes जाना है. Okay, so if you prepare with that kind of mindset, then your life will become miserable. Your life would become very, very tedious. Okay, so I genuinely believed in the saying, my journey is my reward. Focus on the journey, focus on the learning process. Okay, and in the worst case, God forbid, even if you're not able to qualify, if you focus on the learning, if you focus on the journey, you will evolve as a much more knowledgeable, much more wiser, and a much more stronger individual. And you'll be able to do well for yourself in whichever field you work. Okay, even if you do not qualify UPSC, in whichever field you work, whether in the private sector, whether in academics, or wherever, if you enjoy the process, if you learn, you will do well for yourself. Believe me, I've seen many people who do not qualify the exam, but they are extremely satisfied. They do extremely well for themselves afterwards. Okay, so focus on the journey, focus on the process rather than thinking about the result every single day. Okay, if you focus on the process, results will come inevitably. The last thing is, I believed that we have one life and we should not live a life of regrets. Okay, so during the course of preparation, my simple philosophy was that I'm going to give my 110%. And if results come my way, good. If results don't come my way, at least I won't have the regret that I did not give my best. Once you give your best, okay, don't think about anything else. See, the burden of regret is the biggest burden that you can have in your entire life. Okay, but if you know that you have given your 100% and there is nothing more you could have done, then you would be internally sort of content. You would be internally sort of at peace with yourself. Okay, so again, during the course of preparation, just give your 100%, have a learning attitude, have a positive attitude every single day. Don't think about the results. Everything will fall in place. Okay. And finally, the working professionals dilemma. Okay, a lot of people ask me whether we should leave our job and prepare, whether it is possible to prepare while working. See, even I used to work earlier in the private sector before I started my preparation. And nowadays there are lots of working professionals who prepare while working. Okay, so it's not impossible. It might be a bit difficult. You'll have to manage your time very efficiently, very judiciously, and it's completely possible. There are lots of people who qualify to crack this exam while working. However, I was not very comfortable working and preparing simultaneously, so I left my job and gave 1 full year to UPSC. Okay. Uh, my personal suggestion would be, if you can leave your job, if you are financially in a position to do so, you should leave your job, because UPSC is something which requires your full-time attention. It's a full-time job. So instead of giving half-hearted attempts, okay, it's always better, prepare for 1 year, give your best, and after that, if you don't qualify in your first attempt, after that you can sort of refine and polish your preparation and work simultaneously. But to build that foundation, to build that base, I think it requires a lot of effort and time, and you won't be able to do justice with UPSC preparation if you are working side by side. Again, it's my personal opinion. Uh, if you ask different people, they'll have their own views regarding this. And as I said earlier also, it's completely possible. There are so many people who work and who qualify this exam, who prepare for this exam and qualify, crack the exam. So it's very much possible. Uh, but again, personally, I felt that I was more comfortable leaving my job and preparing for this examination. Okay, so this is the first part of this session, getting in the right frame of mind. Again, I devoted a lot of time on this part because most of the people ignore this. They straight away start preparing. Okay, ये prelims में क्या पढ़ना है, mains में क्या पढ़ना है, book list क्या है. Okay, see, those things are fine, but this is the foundation. If you have not mentally prepared yourself for this examination, again, you won't be able to sustain your motivation. You won't be able to prepare for 2 full years, which is required for this examination. I've seen many people who start their preparation with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of zeal, and after few weeks or few months, they lose their steam. So this part, you have to mentally prepare yourself. You have to get in the right frame of mind before starting the preparation. If you do this thing right, half the work is done. Okay. Now coming to the actual preparation. So as most of you must be knowing, so this examination has 3 parts: the preliminary examination, the main examination, and the personality test. So let us start with the preliminary examination of the prelims. Now, what you need to understand is that prelims or preparation for prelims is not a standalone process. Okay, you need to prepare in an integrated and holistic way. Okay, when I started my preparation, I started with preparing for main examination. See, prelims has 2 parts, the static part and the current affairs part. The static part is common for both prelims as well as mains. The static part of history, culture, geography, polity, Indian society, Indian economy, these things are common for both prelims as well as main examination. Okay, so if you prepare for main examination, around 70 to 80% of the prelims preparation is automatically done. The static portion is automatically covered. Now, as far as the current affairs or the dynamic part is concerned, prelims requires a different kind of orientation as compared to mains. Okay, but for that, around 2 months before the prelims, like 2 months, if you start preparing for that prelim specific portion, which is exclusively for prelims, the current affairs, which is exclusively for prelims, I personally feel that 2 months is more than enough. So around 50 to 60 days before the exam, before the preliminary examination, you can start preparing for those things which are exclusively for prelims. Okay, before that, say if you are planning to take the examination next year June, okay, you're starting your preparation now. So you should start your preparation with going through the with your main examination. Okay, till next year, say around January or February, you should prepare for main examination. You should complete the static portion. You should complete ethics part. You should complete your optional part. Okay, and then from say next year, say January or February onwards, the last 2 to 3 months, you can focus exclusively on prelims. Okay, now I'm not going to go through the book list for different topics or for different subjects under prelims. Okay, the book lists are available everywhere. In case you want to know about book list, you can write in the chat box. I'm going to basically explain, I'm going to delve into some of the general principles which you should take care while preparing for prelims. Okay. So first is you have to build a strong foundation by preparing the fundamentals of static portion. So as I told, the static portion comprises of history, modern history, medieval, ancient history, culture, Indian culture, geography, Indian geography and world geography, polity, basics of Indian economy, basics of Indian society, and basics of environment and science and technology. Okay, these are the static portion, which are common for both prelims as well as main. Again, you have to read the static portion multiple times. I mean, just one or two readings is not enough. You have to read them at least 5 to 6 times in order to absorb it, in order to internalize it. Okay. I personally did not make notes for the static portion because I thought that it's a wastage of time. I personally used to just highlight in the relevant books or the photocopy material which I bought, and I used to write whatever I had to write in those notes only. Okay. As far as the prelims specific portion is concerned, things which are exclusively for prelims. Okay. Now again, how to know which are the things which are exclusively for prelims? Okay. For this, you need to analyze previous year question papers. And when I'm saying analyze, it does not mean just glancing through it or just reading it once or twice. By analysis, I mean you have to read it at least 15 to 20 times. For every topic, it should be at the back of your mind. Okay, in science and technology, what kind of questions have come in the last 7 to 8 years? Okay, in environment, what kind of questions has UPSC asked in the last 7 to 8 years? Okay, for every topic, you need to sort of internalize. You need to sort of, it should be at the tip of your tongue, what kind of questions UPSC asks, what kind of questions can be asked in the future. Okay, so thorough analysis of previous year question papers is a must in order to understand the expectations of UPSC, what kind of questions are asked in different topics, in different subjects, in prelims. Okay, so basically you have to identify the broad themes from where questions are asked. Okay, for instance, I have listed a few broad themes which UPSC asks recurrently or has asked recurrently over the years. For example, if you analyze the questions of polity and governance, most of the questions, apart from the static portion, they focus on government policies and programs, okay, bills and legislations, or different committees, recommendations of different committees which have been set up in recent times. Okay, if you analyze the questions of environment, many of the questions are asked with regard to locations of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, rivers flowing through national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, then renewable energy or alternative sources of energy. Okay, a number of questions you can find on fuel cell, bioethanol, biodiesel, biofertilizers, etc. Okay, then a lot of questions you can see which are asked from biodiversity, IUCN Red List, conventions and protocols related to protection of biodiversity, etc. Again, see, these are the broad themes. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that if UPSC has asked one question, it is not going to ask the same question again. But you have to identify the theme from where question is being asked. So if UPSC has asked a question on fuel cell, the larger theme is alternative source of energy. So you have to anticipate questions, you have to predict questions. What are the other questions which UPSC can ask from alternative sources of energy, especially those areas which have been in news in recent times? Okay, so in prelims, you have to predict questions, you have to generate new questions by looking and by analyzing at the questions that have been asked. Okay. Similarly, from other topics also, I have listed down few themes from where questions are asked every few years, or these are the recurrent themes that UPSC focuses on. Okay, economic and social development, a lot of questions are asked from reports and indices of different institutions. Okay, World Bank, IMF, ADB, Global Economic Forum, etc. In geography, lots of map-based questions are asked. Okay, countries bordering Mediterranean Sea, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, etc. Tributaries of different rivers, etc. Okay, in IR, a lot of focus is on international organizations, summits and conferences where they are held, headquarters of different organizations, etc. Okay, and then there are some miscellaneous questions that are asked. For example, questions related to Indian tribes, okay, located in different states, questions related to geographical indications, questions related to festivals of different communities in different states. Okay, so these are some miscellaneous questions. So for prelims, go through, the best way to prepare prelims is by analyzing and practicing previous year question papers, last 10 years, 12 years question papers. Go through them, analyze them, identify the broad themes from where questions are asked. Okay, now this is extremely important because in UPSC, the syllabus is so vast that generally people say that, I mean, UPSC does not have any syllabus. You have to read everything under the sun. It is not like that. In UPSC, more than what to read, it is important to know what not to read. Okay. And that discretion, that judgment you'll be able to develop only when you know what UPSC expects of you. What are the kind of questions that are asked in UPSC? Okay. So whenever you are reading a newspaper, whenever you are reading a magazine or any book or anything, you need to have an examination bias. You need to know at the back of your mind, okay, this is important for UPSC, this is important for UPSC prelims, this is important for UPSC mains, this is important for essay, this might help me in interview. Okay. And if you think that it is not going to help, something which you are reading, something which you have come across is not going to help in either the prelims or the mains or the interview or the essay, just don't read it. Okay. So what not to read is a discretion, is an art that you will have to develop. Otherwise, you will end up reading everything under the sun. Okay. And it's not going to help you as far as cracking this examination is concerned. So previous year question paper, thorough analysis of previous year question paper will help you in developing that discretion, that judgment as to what is important, what is not. Okay. One important thing that I did during my preliminary examination is mastering the art of eliminating wrong options. Because see, preliminary examination or prelims is very unpredictable. It's very dicey. So I've seen lots of people who have qualified this examination who are already in service and then they're not able to crack the prelims next year. Okay. So you need to understand that you need to score around 50% in prelims. So it's GS paper is 200 marks. The cutoff is generally in the range of 100, 105. Maybe if few years it could be around 110. But on an average, it's between 100 and 110. Okay. So you have to score around 55%. Okay. Now for that, my strategy used to be that I have to attempt around, say, 75 to 80 questions out of 100. So out of 75 to 80 questions, say around 10, 12, 15 are wrong. Okay. So say 65 right, 15 wrong. I'll be able to score in that range, 110, 115. However, the problem with prelims is that out of those 80 questions, at least my personal experience was that I wasn't absolutely sure, 100% sure for more than 25 to 30 questions. Okay. After, like beyond those 25, 30 questions, you have to master the art of eliminating wrong options. You'll have to make educated sort of guesswork. Again, educated guesswork, not blind guesswork. Okay. So for instance, one strategy or one thing that I used to, that worked for me was eliminating options which are very strong words, very strongly worded options. For example, words like all, okay, must, or only. These are very strong words, and generally right options, right choices do not have these words. Okay. So for instance, I have listed down a few questions which have come in previous year prelim examination. Okay. So in 2017, there was a question on National Skill Qualification Framework, NSQF. And there one question was, the question was regarding NSQF, and one of the options was a learner can acquire the certification for competency only through formal training. Again, because of the word only, it created a sort of suspicion in my mind. I eliminated that option and then I was able to guess the right option. Again, if you go through the options of prelims, eliminating one option helps you a lot in arriving at the correct option. Okay, for example, if there are 4 options and the options are like 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and if you are able to eliminate option 1, then you'll be able to arrive at the right answer. Okay, so even if you are able to eliminate one wrong option, there is a very high probability that you will be able to guess the right answer. Okay, there are lots of such examples which you can find if you analyze the previous year question papers. Okay, so for example, in 2016 there was a question on goal of GIAHS, globally important agricultural heritage system. Now, before the examination, I had not even heard of GIAHS, something like GIAHS existed. I didn't know that. Okay, but in the question, one of the options was that goal of GIHS is to provide geographical indications to all varieties of agricultural produce in identified GIHS. Okay, again, because of the word all, I eliminated this option and I was able to guess the right answer. Again, see, this is not a 100% foolproof technique. It's not a very scientific technique. Okay, it might be possible that you are able to guess 5 to 6 right answers. One or two answers might be wrong also using this technique, but this is something which worked for me. Okay, so you can, again, you'll have to find for yourself whether it works or not. Go through previous year question papers, practice test series, try to use this technique. If it works for you, fine. Now coming to the main examination. Main examination is the most important part of civil services examination. Prelims is just an elimination process. Okay, prelims is just a way to basically weed out non-serious candidates. In main examination, all the candidates, or if not all, most of the candidates are serious. Okay, and the competition is very stiff. Okay, so that's why I told that right from the beginning, your focus has to be on main examination. If you prepare for main examination well, 70 to 80% of the prelims will automatically be covered. Now again, I'm not going through the big book list for different topics in paper 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have any doubts regarding the references, okay, we can take them up later. I'll just talk about few general principles which you should take care, which you should follow while preparing for main examination. Now, two most important things as far as main examination is concerned, they are revision and answer writing. Okay. Now, your performance in your main examination does not depend on what you know, but what you are able to write in the examination, what you are able to reproduce in the examination. So, there are 4 GS papers. Let us focus on GS. There are 4 GS papers, paper 1, 2, 3, and 4. 20 questions each. Okay, in the past 2 years, I saw that there are 10 markers as well as 15 markers. Earlier, there used to be 12.5 markers. Okay, so there are 20 questions. On an average, you have 9 minutes for each question. For 10 markers, maybe count 1 minute less. For 15 markers, maybe 1 minute more. But on an average, you have 9 minutes for each question. Out of those 9 minutes, 1.5 minutes will be spent on reading the question, understanding the question, okay, organizing the answer in your mind. So effectively, you have 7 to 8 minutes for writing the answer. Now, in those 7 to 8 minutes, you will be able to write only those things which you have internalized. Okay, you won't be able to write something which you have read just once or twice. Okay, so reading too much of stuff is not going to help you in the examination. You might become a scholar, you might become a very knowledgeable person, but as far as cracking the examination is concerned, I'm not sure whether it's going to help you. Okay, so that's why you should read limited, but you have to read it multiple times. By multiple times, I mean at least 7 to 8 times. Believe me, the pressure is so much during the main examination, you won't be able to write if you haven't read something multiple times. Okay, so read limited, read well, revise regularly. Okay, you have to do UPSC specific preparation. You need to understand what are the expectations of UPSC. You need to have an examination bias. Okay, many times I've seen, and it used to happen with me also, if I liked some topic, if I'm fond of some topic, I used to go deep into that topic. I used to do research on the topic and waste a lot of time and effort. However, it did not help me in the examination. So again, given the trend, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, the kind of questions that come in the main examination, the width of your knowledge, the breadth of your knowledge is more important than the depth. Because even if you go deep into any topic, you won't be able to write in the examination. You have to write just 150 words, 200 words, 250 words. Okay, for a 10 marker, you have to write 150 words. For a 15 marker, you have to write 250 words. So there is no point doing research on any topic. Okay. So for every topic that is mentioned in the main syllabus, paper 1, 2, 3, and 4, make your own notes. Okay. Your notes, what all should it comprise? It should cover briefly the context, the background of that topic, the different dimensions of that topic. Okay. For every topic or for most of the topics, there would be different dimensions. There would be a historical dimension, constitutional dimension, legal dimension, socio-cultural dimension, economic, political, environmental, geographical, ethical dimension, or the IR, international relations dimension. So these are different dimensions which are possible in any topic. Okay, so focus on this topic. What are the dimensions that are applicable? Okay, if it's a subjective question, if it's an opinion-based question, you have to write the pros and cons of that topic. Okay, then you have to add value by quoting facts and statistics. Okay, and current examples that is happening in the country, that is happening across the world. Okay, then if there an issue is being highlighted, you have to focus on the solutions. Okay, what are the solutions for the issue that is being highlighted? And finally, a futuristic, optimistic conclusion. Okay, I'll briefly talk about answer writing subsequently. There it would become clearer as to how to write an answer. But as far as notes preparing is concerned, all these things should be covered in your notes. Okay, in bullet points, just write the keywords. You do not have to make very bulky, very lengthy notes. Okay, 1 or 2 pages for each topic. Okay, writing the background, pros and cons, if an issue is being highlighted, if it's a subjective topic. Okay, different dimensions of that topic, current examples, facts and statistics, solutions if a problem is being highlighted, and finally, your opinion, a futuristic conclusion, a futuristic optimistic conclusion. Okay, these are the things which you should cover in your notes. You can prepare your notes manually also. You can prepare your notes online also. Online would be more convenient because it's easier to edit. But if you're not comfortable online, you can prepare manually also. Okay, so the key takeaway or the point that I'm trying to convey is that read only that much which you will be able to reproduce in those 7 to 8 minutes in the examination hall. Okay, so there has to be a balance between your intellectual quest, your intellectual satisfaction, and the requirements of this examination. Okay. Now, answer writing. I briefly talked about answer writing earlier also. So see, as far as main examination is concerned, answer writing is extremely important. So the first part was revision. You have to revise continuously. Any topic you have to revise multiple times. Then only you'll be able to write in the examination. Secondly, once you have revised a topic, okay, once it is clear in your head, the second thing is about presentation. How to write answers, how to present your content. Okay. Now, as you must be knowing, that any answer has 3 parts: introduction, body, and conclusion. As far as GS is concerned, introduction is the least important part. Okay, because you have to write 100 words, 150 words, 200 or 250 words. Okay, you cannot spend too much time, effort, or words on introduction. Okay, you can just write a line or two, giving a brief background about the topic. Okay, as far as introduction is concerned. The most important part is the body. So as I told, that body has to be multidimensional. Okay, you have to cover different dimensions in the body of the answer. It is better to write 1 lines of 5 different dimensions rather than writing 5 lines of 1 dimension. Okay, UPSC wants to know whether you are aware of different dimensions or not, whether you are aware of different aspects of any issue or not. Okay, so do not write a unidimensional answer. Try to incorporate as many dimensions, as many aspects, as many facets as possible. I told you, in any topic there would be a constitutional angle, a historical angle, a legal angle, socio-cultural, political, economic, environmental, ethical, IR. Okay, these are the only dimensions which are possible in any topic. Okay, again, you have to add value to your answers by writing current examples, by writing facts and statistics. Okay, by using visual aids such as diagrams, charts, etc. You have to think yourself while writing like main answers. You have to think yourself as a salesperson who is trying to sell his or her answer. to the examiner. And the examiner will buy your answer only if you have added value to your answer. Okay. Only if there is something different in your answer. And how do you add value to your answer? By quoting facts and statistics, because opinion anybody can write. Okay. Opinion is subjective. See, in UPSC, there is no right answer. There are lots of opinion-based questions that are asked in the main examination as well as in the interview, in the personality test. There is no right or wrong answer in opinion-based questions till the time you are able to back your opinion with facts and statistics and examples. You have to convince the examiner, basically. Okay. So writing facts, statistics, current examples, etc. is very important, apart from writing your opinion or apart from writing pros and cons of any topic. Okay. Also focus on solutions. Always focus on solutions in mains as well as in interview. So in mains, if you go through like previous year question papers, you'll find a lot of questions which are highlighting an issue, which are highlighting a problem. Okay, Abhi, subsequently I'll discuss few questions and it will become clear. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of questions will focus on the problem. This is not right. Okay, this is not right. This is not working. Okay, that is fine. But an examiner always wants to know whether you have a constructive outlook or not, whether you are focusing on solutions or not. So even in the question, if solutions are not being asked, you give solutions on your own, from your own side. Okay, just 3 to 4 lines, bullet points. These are the problems and these are the steps that can be taken to deal with the problems. Okay, even if the solutions are not being asked, even also like you need to use this strategy for your optional also. Okay, for instance, I had public administration as my optional, and a lot of questions are were again very provoking, very negative. But in your answer, you have to show to the examiner that you have a constructive, positive mindset and you're focusing on the solutions. Okay, and finally, 1 or 2 lines of a futuristic, optimistic conclusion. Okay, quoting the preamble, quoting the fundamental duties, quoting the vision of the founding fathers of the Constitution. Okay, just 1 or 2 lines of optimistic conclusion. The tone of the conclusion should be, there are problems, we are moving in the right direction, and more steps need to be taken, but we are moving in the right direction. Okay, that should be the tone of your answer in mains, in essay, as well as in interview. Whatever you are saying, whatever you are writing, that should be your tone. Okay, there are problems. I'm aware of the problems. The government is doing these things, and these more things, these more steps can be undertaken. Okay. I'm not going through different components of GS paper 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, I'm not going through them separately. If you have any doubts with regard to different components, okay, we can take them up later. In GS, I would like to say that GS paper 4 is extremely important, paper on ethics. Because if you analyze the marks that are scored by people who qualify or even by people who don't qualify, the range of marks that people get in GS paper 1, 2, and 3 is very less. Okay, but the range of marks that people get in GS paper 4 is huge. Okay, so there is a range of around 25, 30, 40 marks. I'm talking about people who qualify. Okay, some people would get in the range of around 120, 125, 130, whereas some people would get in the range of 90, 95, or 85. Okay, so given the range of marks of paper 4, it is very important to score well in paper 4. And paper 4 is something wherein you can score well by putting in the least amount of effort if you have the right orientation, if you have the right attitude. Okay, if you are clear in your head what UPSC expects of you in paper 4, what is the reason why UPSC has introduced paper 4? Okay, paper 4 has been introduced in the year 2014. Before that, there was no paper on ethics. So you need to be clear in your head, okay, why has this paper been introduced? What is UPSC trying to test through this paper? What are the expectations of UPSC? If that thing is clear, you'll have the right orientation and you'll be able to prepare well for paper 4. Okay. Okay, so these are some of the previous year questions that I have listed here. Okay, for instance, if you look at the first question, the local self-government system in India has not proved to be an effective system of governance critically examined. Okay, so as I told, this question is highlighting a negative aspect. it is saying that local self-government has not proved to be an effective system of governance. Okay, so how will you go about this? Introduction basically will comprise of 1 or 2 lines of brief sort of context or the background. Okay, the 1 or 2 lines why 73rd or 74th Amendment was passed in the year 1993. Okay, then coming to the body part, you have to basically highlight how the local self-government system has not proved to be an effective system of governance. And you have to focus on different dimensions. You have to focus on, in terms of, you have to analyze basically local self-government system in terms of devolution of funds, devolution of functionaries, devolution of finances. Okay, then you have to add value to your answer. How will you add value to your answer? By quoting statistics. Okay, for example, there is something called devolution index. So you can quote that, how different states are performing on the devolution index. Okay, you can quote statistics with regard to, say, what percentage of the total finances local self-government institutions are able to raise on their own. It shows whether they are dependent on state government or central government, or they are self-reliant. Okay, so these are the facts and statistics which you have to quote to basically substantiate whatever you are saying. You have to give current examples. You have to give examples where it is not working. You can also give examples where it is working in states such as Kerala. And finally, you also have to give solutions. Okay, what steps need to, okay, it's not working. Okay, there are issues with regard to funds, functions, functionaries. There are issues with regard to training and capacity building. There are issues with regard to transparency and accountability and corruption. Okay, all these things you have said. But again, what needs to be done? Now, the question is not asking you that. The question is not asking you for solutions, but you will have to give solutions in the last. Okay, again, as I said, just 3 to 4 bullet points. Okay, given these problems, these steps can be taken to deal with these problems. Okay. Similarly, questions, the second question, role of PSC in establishing accountability of government to the people. Again, in the end, you will have to give solution with regard to functioning of PSC. How, what are the issues in the, like in the body, you will write what are the issues in the functioning of PSC, how it is not able to establish accountability of the government to the people. And before the conclusion, you'll have to write solutions also. What are the reforms that need to be undertaken vis-a-vis functioning of PSC so as to strengthen accountability of government to the people? Okay. So if you go through previous year question papers, you will find lots of such questions. Questions on jobless growth. You'll have to give solutions. What needs to be done to deal with jobless growth? You'll have to give statistics and facts with regard to employment. Okay. You'll have to give examples, okay, from different states. Some states which are doing well, why they are doing well. Some states are not doing well, why they are not doing well. Okay. Similarly, in opinion-based questions. So a lot of times opinion-based questions are asked. For example, question on simultaneous elections, simultaneous Lok Sabha and assembly elections. Okay. Or a question on uniform civil code. Now, these are opinion-based subjective questions. Now, again, in these questions, you do not have to take just one stand in your answer. You need to understand that you are not writing a newspaper editorial. Okay, if you read newspaper editorial or newspaper opinion pieces, okay, there, what does the author do? The author takes a stand and the entire article is on basically justifying that stand. Okay, in UPSC, you don't have to do that. Okay. In UPSC, UPSC is basically testing whether you have a balanced personality or not, whether you are aware of different aspects of that issue or not. Okay. So you have to highlight all the aspects of that issue. Okay. For example, simultaneous elections, you have to basically write what are the arguments for simultaneous election, what are the arguments against simultaneous elections, and at last you can take a very soft stand. Okay. Given the pros and the cons, given the arguments for and arguments against, this is something which can be done. Again, the tone of your answer, the kind of words that you use matter a lot. Okay, there are two kinds of tone, deterministic tone and probabilistic tone. Okay, so when we use words like must, should, we should do this, the government should do this. Okay, this is deterministic tone. So you are saying that this is the right way to do things. Whereas probabilistic tone entails use of words like may, can, the government may do this, or this can be done, this might be done. Okay, so it's always safe to use a probabilistic tone rather than a deterministic tone in your answers. Again, for mains as well as for interview. Okay, so you can take a stand, but only after highlighting different aspects of an issue, you can then take a stance. Okay, similarly for uniform civil code, if a question comes on uniform civil code, you have to, after writing the introduction, after writing the context and the constitution provisions, etc., you have to write arguments for uniform civil code, you have to write arguments against uniform civil code. Again, when you're writing arguments, the arguments have to be multidimensional. Okay, so you have to include the socio-cultural angle with regard to women empowerment. You have to include the political angle, okay, the politics of UCC. You can include the economic angle, how UCC will impact the economic empowerment of women, etc. Okay, you can also include the ethical angle. From an ethical point of view, what are the arguments for and against UCC? So again, try to include as many dimensions as possible while you're giving arguments. Okay, and then finally, you can take a stand. Okay, a balanced stand, a probabilistic stand, not a deterministic or a, this should be done or this must be done. Those kind of words should not be used. Okay, I won't devote too much time on essay. See, as far as essay is concerned, I personally did not prepare separately or specifically for essay. See, as far as essay is concerned, there are two things: the content and the presentation. The content will come from your GS knowledge. Okay. What you can do is identify themes from where essays are asked. So if you go through last 15, 20 years of previous year topics that UPSC has asked in essay, you will find certain themes, certain recurrent themes from where essays are asked. Themes such as health, education, women empowerment, science and technology, okay, media, governance and corruption. Okay, so these are some of the recurrent themes. So what you can do is prepare your content for these themes. Okay, for example, education. So you can prepare say around 3,000, 4,000 words content on education. What kind of education system India had in ancient times, okay, in medieval times, in modern times, after independence, what kind of policies were introduced as far as education is concerned. Then you can focus on present times. Okay, you can focus on the national education policy, status of primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, etc. What are the issues in the education system? Some facts, some statistics, some states which are doing well in education. Okay, and what are the solutions? What are the steps that need to be taken? So again, using these headings and subheadings, you can prepare theme-wise content. You can generate theme-wise content, on health, education, women empowerment, governance, corruption, media, etc. Okay. Apart from these themes, the content will come from your GS knowledge. As far as the presentation is concerned, okay, like any answer in essay also, there will be 3 parts. Okay, introduction, body and conclusion. Unlike a GS answer, in essay, introduction is extremely important. Okay, because I don't think the examiner is going to read each and every word of your essay. He or she does not have that kind of time. So you have to capture the attention of the examiner through your introduction. If your introduction is catchy, if your introduction is attractive, okay, the examiner will read not each and every word of your essay, but he will try to read a large part of your essay. Okay, so in essay, unlike GS, introduction is extremely important. Now, how to write an attractive or a catchy introduction? Now, different people use different techniques. Some people start with quotes. Some people start with a newspaper item or a newspaper heading. Okay, some statement of some dignitary, some statement of the prime minister or the president, etc. Okay, which is relevant to the topic. What I personally used to do, I liked starting with an anecdote. Okay, anecdote, basically it's like a short fictional story which would capture the theme of the essay, which would capture the spirit of the essay. Okay, I'll just give you one example. So in 2016, the year when I qualified for the Indian Police Service, there was an essay topic, if development is not engendered, it is endangered. Okay. Okay. Now, engender basically means to cause, to bring about. Okay, so basically the meaning of this topic is that if development does not take place, if holistic and inclusive development does not take place, then the process of development itself would be endangered. Okay, now to capture the spirit of this topic, to capture the spirit of this essay, I made an anecdote. So I said that basically I created a character, a fictional character, say Sita or Seema. Okay, Seema is a girl who lives in Dandkaranya region of Chhattisgarh. It's a Naxal infested area. Okay, and initially she believed in the institutions of the state. Initially she had faith in the government, etc. However, certain atrocities were committed against her and her family. Certain injustices were meted out to her and her family. Her land was basically taken at a very low price. Then her brother was arrested. Certain things took place. Uh, Basically indicative of the fact that inclusive development did not take place. Certain sections of the society were excluded from the development process. And because of those things, she joined the Naxal movement. Seema joined the Naxal movement, and then she started basically destroying the symbols of development. She started destroying the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the bridges that were being constructed by the government. So basically the point that I was trying to convey through this anecdote was that because inclusive development did not take place, because the fruits of development did not benefit all the sections of the society, those sections which were marginalized, those sections which were excluded from the development process, they started endangering the process of development itself. Okay. And then throughout the essay, I quoted that character of Seema to basically convey my point, to convey my uh, to convey the spirit of the essay. Okay. Now, if you write such stories, such short stories or such short anecdotes, it will capture the attention of the examiner. Okay, and he or she will think, okay, let us see what happens next. Let us see what happens next. Okay. Now, this is something which you cannot use in every essay, but in few of the essays you can use this technique, writing an anecdote. Otherwise, you can always start with a quote or something related to current affairs, something which has been said by the Prime Minister or the President, etc. Okay. Also in the introduction, make your stand very clear, because in many essays, uh, your opinion will be sought. I mean, those would be subjective essays where you'll have to give your opinion. So many times what people do that, they do not clear their opinion. They do not take a stand. In essay, you have to take a stand and you have to justify that stand throughout the essay. You have to reiterate your stand throughout the essay. For example, if the topic is, say, science and technology, one of the topics that has come in recent times, I think few years back, 3 or 4 years back, is science and technology is the panacea for everything, something like this. So you should make your stand very clear in the beginning only. Science and technology is very important, but it is not the panacea for everything. Okay, and everything that you're writing should reinforce that stand. That science and technology is important. It is very important for human progress, for human development, but it is not everything. Okay, it cannot be a replacement for human beings. Okay, it is a good slave, but it is a bad master. Okay, so you'll have to reiterate, reinforce your stand in whatever you're writing. Otherwise, what happens is that we deviate from the topic. Okay, while writing essay, if you're not clear what you're trying to convey, if you're not clear about your stand, you will deviate from your topic midway. Okay, so make your stand clear in the beginning. Again, the stand should not be an extreme stand. It should be a balanced stand, and reinforce, reiterate that stand every few paragraphs, every few, like after you write about a particular heading or subheading. Okay, you should reiterate and reinforce your stand. Okay. As far as the body is concerned, the same principles would apply, which I talked about the GS answers. The body should be multidimensional, covering various dimensions. The body should have facts and examples and statistics. The body should focus on solutions. Okay, the body should be balanced. And finally, the conclusion should be optimistic and futuristic. Okay, so the same principles of answer writing. See, these are universal principles of answer writing. Okay, which are equally applicable for GS, for essay, as well as for optional answer writing. Okay. These are some of the things that you should keep in mind while writing an essay. Okay, use of headings and subheadings. Try to use headings and subheadings. Okay, because it makes life easier for the examiner. The examiner knows what he or she is reading. Okay, so write headings and subheadings. Okay, try to use diagrams and visual representations as much as possible. Okay, short and simple sentences. Do not use flowery language. Okay, very simple language, but grammatically correct language. Okay, grammatical error is something which is not acceptable at this level. You do not need to have a great command over your language. Okay, but just simple language, short and simple sentences, small paragraphs covering one theme or one sub-theme in one paragraph. Okay, do not try to write very long sentences or very lengthy paragraphs. Okay, uh, it makes life difficult for the examiner. It's not easy to the eye. It's not easy to read. Okay, have a central theme in the essay and keep reiterating it every few paragraphs. I told you this earlier. Also, essay has to be generic. Okay, many times people start using their optional knowledge in the essay. You need to understand that an essay paper is being corrected by a generalist. Okay, so if you start using your subject matter knowledge, for example, your sociology knowledge or public administration knowledge or your geography knowledge too much, and if you make it too technical, if you start using too many jargons, okay, the examiner does not have the time to Google what you're writing. Okay, he will just leave. Okay, so essay has to be generic. Okay, do not try to use your optional knowledge or specialized knowledge that you have gained in your past in your essay. Okay, and finally, time management is very important because in the past few years, 2 essays are coming. So you need to give equal time and effort to both the essays. Generally, we have a tendency that we give too much time on the first essay. Okay, out of the 3 hours, 2 hours we put in for the first essay and the second essay we write in 1 hour. Okay, that is not a judicious thing to do. So brainstorm for 15-20 minutes. Okay, then write for another 1 hour. So keep the sort of time into consideration while you're writing essay. Do not get sort of carried away while writing the first essay. During the examinations, during the main examination, because the entire examination is a very taxing process. There are 9 papers. There are 9 papers in the main examination. 2 are qualifying in nature. The marks of 7 papers are added while calculating the merit. Okay, but main examination take place on continuous days. Okay, and each paper is 3 hours, and each day you'll have 2 papers. So it becomes very taxing. It's physically and mentally draining. So you have to mentally prepare yourself for the main examination, and that's why writing tests are very important. Okay, because it sort of trains you to sit for 6 hours in a day, and it sort of trains you basically physically and mentally and prepares you for the examination. One important thing that you need to keep in mind while giving the main examination is time management. So try to attempt in GS, especially, try to attempt as many questions as possible. Okay, I've seen few people that they attempt, they say that we write only those answers which we are confident about. We'll write 14 to 15 answers out of 20, and we'll try to write very good answers. Now, personally, my strategy has been you should not try to write extraordinary or earth-shaking answers in every question. Okay. See, the cutoff for main examination is what? During like 2-3 years back when I used to give examination, it used to be less than 50% out of 2025 marks. Okay, those who qualify the examination used to get around 950,000 marks. Okay, 1,000 used to be a very good score. So you have to score 50%. So your objective in the main examination should be, you should write average or decent quality answers across, instead of writing extraordinary answers for few questions and writing very bad answers for few questions. So what happens is that initially, again, like in essay also, in GS also it happens that initially we put in a lot of time on the initial 8, 10 or 12 questions, and then the last 7, 8 questions we do not give them the time and effort which they deserve. Okay. See, you need to understand that even if you write an extraordinary answer, you'll be able to score half marks or 1 marks extra. Okay, so the average marks that people get if you write a good answer is 5 marks. If you write an extraordinary answer, if you write a very good answer, devoting 2 to 3 minutes extra. So if you have to complete an answer in 9 minutes, okay, you devote 12 to 13 minutes for an answer, and you write very good answer. Okay, you'll get 5.5, 6 marks, or say 6.5 marks. But because of that extra 3 minutes or 4 minutes that you have given to that answer, you'll be able to you'll have to either leave one question or you'll be able to write a very bad answer. And because of that, you lose 2 to 3 marks. Because even if you write an average answer, you'll at least get 2 to 3 marks out of 10. Okay, so basically you have to do a simple cost benefit analysis. If I'm putting 3 to 4 minutes extra in one answer, how much marks am I losing in another answer? Okay, so the point that I'm trying to convey is that try to attempt as many questions as possible. Try to write decent answers, average answers throughout. Do not try to write earth-shaking answers, extraordinary answers in every question. Okay, it's not worth the effort. Okay. Second thing that you should consider during the exams is that it's a very long drawn process. Main examination, I told, there are 9 papers, 2 are qualifying in nature. I've seen many people that if one paper does not go as per the expectation, they get disheartened and they allow that to affect their performance in subsequent papers also. Okay, I'll give you a simple example. Again, during my 2016 attempt, essay is generally the first paper, like it's on the first day of the entire main examination. Okay. And as I told you, I wrote on that topic. If development is not engendered, it is endangered. Okay. Now, after I wrote the essay, I came out. Okay. And the Hindi translation of that essay was basically, it was related to gender dimension. Okay. Now, I told you the literal meaning of the word engender is to cause. However, in the Hindi translation of that essay, it was written something related to gender empowerment. Okay, so most of the people in that essay, most of the people had written about gender empowerment and how gender empowerment is an integral part of inclusive and sustainable development. How the state and the government should focus on development of women and balance gender development in order to bring about inclusive development. Now, after I came out, after writing the essay, most of the people had written about the gender development and how gender empowerment is important for inclusive development. However, I did not write about that. I took the literal interpretation of the word engender, and then I wrote what are the things that need to be taken into account for bringing about inclusive development. And for the initial few hours, I was very disheartened. I was very sad because I was writing the exam to improve my rank. I was already in the service. I wanted a particular rank. And I thought that if essay has not gone well, then I won't be able to compensate it through other papers. Okay, and even if I qualify, I won't be able to get a good rank. However, after a few hours, I sort of persuaded myself. I told myself, okay, what is gone, bygones are bygones. Let me focus on subsequent papers. Let me focus on GS paper 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me focus on my optionals. Okay, and I did not allow that disheartenment, setback to affect my performance in subsequent papers. And fortunately, in fact, this issue was raised by Mr. Shashi Tharoor. He wrote to UPSC regarding the wrong interpretation of the topic, and that the word engender has nothing to do with gender. And then UPSC issued a clarification that both the interpretations would be accepted. Those who have written about the gender dimension, it would be accepted because it was written in the Hindi translation. And those who have basically done the literal interpretation of engender, those interpretations would also be accepted. Okay, so the point I'm trying to convey is that do not get disheartened if something does not go well as per your expectation. Okay, because it's such a long drawn process. There are so many stages, there are so many papers that even if you do not perform well in one of the papers, in one of the stages, you'll be able to compensate it through other papers. You'll be able to compensate it in subsequent stages. Okay, so once you write a paper, do not think about that paper. Just focus on the next paper. Okay, that is really important. Okay. And finally, few general tips during the main examination: maintain a good health. Okay, sleep well, stay away from illness. I've especially for those people who are staying outside, their home, who are not staying with their family. I've seen few people who put in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort throughout the year, and few days before the main examination, they fall ill, and all the hard work goes down the drain. So take care of your health, sleep well, eat healthy. Okay, and give your best during the main examination. Now coming to the final stage of this examination, the personality test or the interview, which it is popularly called. Now the personality test or the interview is extremely unpredictable as well as critical. Okay, so few marks here and there in the personality test would determine whether you find your name in the merit list or not, or what will be your rank. Okay, I've seen lots of people who score extremely well in main examination, but in the interview they score very less, and that's why they are either not able to crack the examination, or they are not able to get the desired rank. Similarly, I've seen lots of people who do not score that well in mains, but they're able to compensate that by scoring very high in the interview. Again, in the interview, also the range of marks that people get is extremely huge. Okay, which I told for ethics paper also. So even in the interview, people get in the range of say 140 to 210 or 220. At least few years back, this used to happen. There were people who used to get 215, 220. There were people who used to get 140, 145. So it's a huge range of 60 to 70 marks. So the effective, although the actual weightage of interview is 275 marks, but the effective weightage of interview is much more than 275 marks in terms of percentage of marks, percentage of overall marks that you scored. Okay, so interview is very unpredictable as well as critical. Okay, now generally many people say that it is not possible to prepare for the interview. Okay, it's not like that. If you do your interview preparation, your personality test preparation meticulously, you can prepare for the interview. The important thing that you need to realize is that your personality is something that you cannot shape or you cannot change overnight. So if you start preparing for the interview, or if you start preparing for the personality test after the main examination or after the results of main examination come, it would become very difficult to meet the expectations of UPSC. So that's why you need to prepare for personality test right from the beginning. Okay, right from the time you are preparing for prelims and mains, you should also prepare for your personality test. You should also prepare for your interview. Because as I said, your personality cannot be changed or cannot be shaped overnight or in a matter of few weeks. It takes time. Okay, so you have to start making that conscious effort right from the beginning. Okay, now UPSC basically is looking for balanced and optimistic candidates. It is not looking for geniuses. It is not looking for very intellectual people. It is looking for people who have a balanced and optimistic personality. Okay, who do not have extreme opinions about different issues, who basically who focus on solutions, who have a constructive outlook, who are not cynical about things. Okay, now these are qualities, these are traits which you have to inculcate through continuous practice. For many of us, these qualities do not come naturally. Okay, most of us have a habit of criticizing things. Okay, most of us have a habit of taking extreme stands. Many of us have extreme views and opinions on different issues. You'll have to make a conscious effort, okay, to develop, to inculcate a balanced personality. Okay. One thing that I did as far as my interview was concerned is I filled my DAF, which is the detailed application form, very meticulously, very carefully. If you fill your DAF very strategically and very meticulously, and if luck is by your side on the interview day, you can guide the course of the interview. You can anticipate more than 90% of the questions in your interview. Okay. For instance, one technique that I used was to have a running theme in my DAF. Okay, running theme basically means that if you go through your DAF, if you see the template of DAF, okay, there you have to write lots of things regarding your hobbies, regarding your prizes and medals and scholarships or your achievements in life, etc. Okay, now most of my prizes or my achievements related to, because I had done my graduation in economics, then I had done my management in rural, like specializing in rural management. My optional was public administration, and most of my achievements, most of the prizes and the medals that I had won, it pertained to economics, rural development, or public administration. Okay, so I made it a point to highlight that. Okay, I made it, for example, in the hobbies, one of the hobbies that I wrote was uh, carrying out discussions on social media. However, I made it specific. Okay, I wrote that carrying out discussions on social media on topics related to Indian economy, rural development, and governance. Okay, you need to understand that you have to give as less opportunity to the examiner to ask questions. Okay, you have to be as specific and pinpointed as possible when you're basically filling your DAF. For example, in the hobbies, if you write cooking, okay, or reading books or gardening, okay, now these are very generic areas. Cooking is a huge area in itself. Okay, and the examiner can ask anything from cooking: Indian cooking, Western cooking, okay, American cooking, European cooking. Okay, there are so many aspects of cooking. So you need to be specific what kind of cooking. If you're writing reading books, what kind of books? Fiction, non-fiction. Okay. Uh, if you're writing playing sports, what kind of sports? Be as specific as possible. Then only you'll be able to prepare well on those topics. Otherwise, cooking is such a huge area and the examiner can ask anything. And be rest assured, the examiners are extremely experienced. They have had experience of more than 40 years in public life. There are 5 people in the interview board, and all of them will have a combined experience of more than 200 years. And be rest assured, they know everything under the sun. They know about engineering, they know about economics, they know about public administration, they know about sociology, they know about cooking, gardening, cricket, tennis, they know about everything. Okay, so do not even think of fooling them. Okay, you won't be able to, and it would be counterproductive. Okay, so in the interview, it is extremely important to be humble and respectful towards the board. As I told, they are very senior public servants, they are very senior civil servants, or people from the armed forces or people from academia, and they are vastly experienced, okay, much more knowledgeable than us. So one thing that puts them off is arrogance. And many of us have this tendency, okay, because during the course of preparation, we think that, or we start believing that we know everything. Okay, and that arrogance is then visible when we speak. Okay, so if you have to make a mistake, if you have to err on the side of diffidence rather than overconfidence. By diffidence, I do not mean be underconfident, okay, but be humble. Do not be overconfident. Do not be arrogant. Do not be snobbish. Okay. The second thing is always be honest. If you don't know something, just say, I don't know, sir. See, the board members also understand that you won't know everything. You're not expected to know everything. Okay, but if you don't know something, you should not try to deceive them. Okay, you might think that you have been able to deceive them, but you won't be able to. Be honest. Okay, just tell them, sir, I don't know. I'm sorry, sir, I don't know. Okay, I've come across many people uh, who's more than half of the who have said, sir, I don't know, in more than half of the interview, and still they have scored well. Okay, so not knowing is not like it's not something to be ashamed of. Okay, but if you try to make up answers and if you try to sort of make a fool of the other person, that is something which is unacceptable. So be honest, be respectful, be balanced. Okay, and fill your DAF very carefully. Fill your DAF very meticulously. Try to have a running theme in your DAF and prepare on that theme. Be very specific when you're writing your hobbies, when you're writing your achievements. Be very specific. Otherwise, the interviewer can ask anything. Okay, and it will become very difficult to sort of manage what kind of questions can be anticipated. Okay, so I think I'm done from my side. If you have any questions, we can take up those questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, would like to ask you, sir. Sir, what is the importance of test series in UPSC preparation, sir?
Yeah, so test series is extremely important for prelims as well as for mains. Okay, for prelims, I told that previous year question papers are extremely important. Once you have gone through and once you have thoroughly analyzed previous year question papers, then you can start practicing test series of different institutes. Again, there are lots of online test series available also nowadays. Okay, you can practice those test series at your home also. Everything is available online. The important thing regarding prelims test series is that you have to basically identify the key areas. You have to identify the key themes from where questions can be asked. Okay, it's highly improbable that the questions that are being asked in a test series would be repeated in UPSC, or the same questions would be asked in UPSC. Okay, but you have to identify, okay, this question has been asked in this test series because this has been in news in recent times. What more can be asked from this area? You have to anticipate, you have to generate new questions. So for every one question, you have to generate 5 more questions from that area, from that theme, which can be asked in UPSC. Okay, similarly for main examination. For main examination, again, test series plays a very important role, not only for self-assessment, but also basically it sort of physically and mentally prepares you for sitting for 6 hours in a day, okay, and writing for 6 hours in a day. Like it's a very challenging task in itself. Also, one important thing that you should keep in mind while practicing test series is that it is only for self-assessment. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. So if you're scoring very well in test series, do not become overconfident, or if you're scoring poorly in test series, do not become anxious or do not worry too much. Okay, because the same questions are not going to be asked. So after you have given the test, after answers are with you, you sit with the answers. Okay, you sit with the answers very peacefully, very quietly, see where you are going wrong. Okay, if you have committed a particular mistake, why you have committed those mistakes. Okay, because like there could be many reasons. Either you didn't know the answer, or you knew the answer but you got confused. Okay, or if basically you have written the right answer, whether it is by fluke many times, especially in prelims test series. Okay, a lot of answers are right because of fluke. Okay, because at that time our intuition said so. That's why we mark so. So again, you have to assess where you are going wrong, why you are going wrong. Okay, and what more can be done to basically rectify those mistakes. Do not take the test series too seriously. Do not become overconfident if you're doing well, and do not be anxious or do not be worried if you're not doing well. But yes, test series is very important both for prelims as well as main examination, and especially for optional subjects. For optional subjects, it is extremely important for self-assessment.
Sir, how to stay motivated and how to handle stress during preparation, sir, for UPSC?
Yeah, so the first part of my presentation, I entirely focused on that part only, because given the long drawn and time consuming nature of the entire examination process, it is very important to stay motivated at least for 2 years. I told that in the best case scenario, even if you are able to crack the examination in your first attempt, you need to stay motivated. You need to give your best for at least 2 years of your life. And to stay motivated throughout these 2 years, it's a very challenging task. So as I told earlier also, you'll be able to stay motivated only when you have only when you have an inner drive, only when you are clear in your head why you are doing this. Okay, what is your vision in life, why you want to join the civil services. Okay, and whenever you are sort of demotivated, whenever you are feeling low, you need to think about that vision. You need to think about that reason why you are giving this examination, why you are working so hard, why you are making so many sacrifices. Okay, apart from that, you need to have a clear unwinding strategy. You need to have a very clear rejuvenating strategy. Okay, so there would be days when you'll feel low, there would be days when you feel demotivated. Okay, just go out, meet your friends, watch a movie, watch a Netflix series, go to the gym, go for running, whatever suits you. Okay, so see, you need to understand that you cannot keep on studying 10 hours, 12 hours a day continuously for 2 years. Okay, it's humanly impossible. Okay, and you don't need to study for 12 hours every single day. 7 to 8 hours is more than enough. Again, the quality of hours, it's not about the number of hours. It's about the quality of those hours. Okay, so when I was preparing, I used to read for 8 to 9 hours per day, not more than that. I used to watch a movie almost every day. If you're reading for 8 to 9 hours a day, if you are sleeping for 7 to 8 hours a day, you have 7 to 8 hours at your hands, which is more than enough for relaxing your mind, for rejuvenating, okay, and for doing other things. The important thing is consistency, putting those 7 to 8 hours every single day. Okay, so again, consistency will come only through internal motivation. Only when you want, see, if you're doing this because your parents have asked you to prepare for civil services, or if your friends are preparing for civil services, so under peer pressure you are also doing it, you won't be able to stay motivated. You will be wasting your time, money, and effort. So have a clear reason. Okay, have a clear drive why you are doing this. Okay, once the why is clear, how will be taken care of. Okay, once you know why you are doing something, how to do it will be taken care of automatically.
Sir, can you share some details about IPS training program, sir?
Yeah, so see, once you qualify the examination, say you are allotted the Indian Police Service, so the first 3 months you have to undergo a foundational training in Labasna, Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration in Mussoorie. There, all the services basically they come together for the foundation course. After the foundation course, different services they go to their respective academies for professional training. So for IPS, the professional training takes place in Hyderabad at the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy. And say foundation course starts in the month of August. This year it has been delayed because of Corona pandemic. But generally, foundation course starts in the month of like August end, and it ends in November end or December first week. Then the professional training starts mid December or last week of December. The professional training has two parts. It takes place in two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 comprises of academy training, which is around 10 to 11 months, wherein we are trained in both indoor as well as outdoor subjects. So there are various indoor subjects such as IPC, CRPC, Indian Evidence Act, leadership and team management, okay, special laws, internal security, maintenance of public peace and order, etc. So these are various indoor subjects that we are trained, um, and then there are various outdoor subjects. So outdoor schedule in National Police Academy is extremely rigorous. It's very difficult. Okay, and we have to do, like, the outdoor components include running, cycling, swimming, horse riding, trekking, route marches. So there are route marches of 40 kilometers with 15 kg backpack and a rifle. Uh, we have 16 kilometers run. We have swimming. Apart from that, there are various attachments that we have to undergo. Okay, we have attachments with institutions such as ITBP or IB, Intelligence Bureau. Okay, so it's an eclectic mix of indoor subjects, outdoor subjects, and attachments outside the National Police Academy. Uh, After 10 to 11 months of academy training, we are sent to our respective cadres, wherein we undergo our district practical training for around 6 months. So district practical training, basically it includes attachments with various offices at the district level, attachment with the SP office, attachment with the DYSP, attachment with the court and prosecution, attachment with the office of DM, etc. And thereafter you have to basically hold an independent charge of SHO of a police station for around 3 months. Okay, so this is phase 1 training. Phase 1 training is 10 to 11 months of academy training plus 6 months of district practical training. Thereafter, you come back to the academy for around 3 months, and phase 2 training then starts. So in phase 2 training, again, there are few indoor subjects that we have to study, and there are few outdoor subjects also. The same outdoor subjects, basically they continue, running and swimming, etc. And finally you pass out. So the entire training comprises or basically it stretches for around 22 months.
Yes. Sir, can you tell us about some memorable moments that you experienced after becoming an IPS officer, sir?
See, after you crack the examination, your life changes a lot. Okay, people start seeing you differently. People start perceiving you differently. Okay, because civil services examination is something which is viewed with a lot of respect, which is associated with a lot of prestige and social status in our country. Okay, but once you join the academy, the training schedule is so hectic that you don't get the time to think about these things. It's only when you are in the field that you realize the importance of what you have achieved and uh, what are the kind of opportunities that you get to have sort of positive impact on the lives of people around you. Okay, so during the training, we did not get much time to think about what we have achieved or the implications of our achievement. But when I went for my district practical training, there I realized the kind of expectations that people have from civil servants, especially from IAS and IPS officers. Okay, and during my district practical training, especially when I was holding the charge of a police station as SHO, uh, there were lots of situations wherein I was able to uh, help people around me have a positive impact on their lives, because Indian police service is something, or police is something, or someone people come to when they are in a lot of distress. Okay, when something wrong has happened to them. Okay, so it's a very satisfying experience when you are able to help people in such a situation, when you are able to sort of um, not give them justice, but help them in achieving justice. Okay, by doing your work the way you are supposed to do. Especially this, like during Corona pandemic, like when we were on the field, Corona outbreak had taken place, and at that time, police was basically doing everything. Police, apart from like regular maintenance of law and order or regular routine crime investigation, etc., police was helping migrant laborers. Police was giving them food. Police was supplying medicines to the elderly or those who needed them. Okay, police was everywhere and it was doing tremendous work everywhere. And it was a great opportunity for all of us, including me, to sort of contribute in whatever way I could uh, in dealing with the pandemic. So the most memorable part till now has been that only, my field training as SHO of the police station and dealing with the Corona pandemic.
Sir, can you briefly explain the difference between IAS and IPS cadre, sir?
So in civil services, there are different services. There are 3 All India services and remaining are central services. So All India services comprise of the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, and the Indian Forest Service. So by All India Service, we mean basically these services are recruited by the center, but they serve the states. So once you crack the UPSC, once you get into either IAS or IPS or IFS, okay, you are allotted a cadre. Okay, for instance, I belong to Rajasthan cadre. So once you are in your respective cadre, the operational and administrative control basically belongs to the state government. You are under the operational and administrative control of the state government. In between, you can come for central deputation. All the 3 All India Service Officers as well as central service officers, they can come for central deputation in different central government institutions, such as for IPS, those institutions could be paramilitary forces, or IB, or CBI, or RAW, or NSG, SPG, etc. So this is broadly regarding all India services. That is, they are recruited by the center, but they serve at the disposal of the state. They can also serve the center through central deputation. Now, as far as the difference between IAS and IPS is concerned, as the name suggests, IAS are into general administration. Okay. So an IAS officer basically, once they join the field, okay, they are into implementation of different policies, programs, and schemes related to development, related to general administration. Okay. Whereas IPS, Indian Police Service Officers, they are into maintenance of law and order, they are into crime prevention and crime investigation. The 3 main tasks of an IPS officer or police in general is crime prevention, crime investigation, and maintenance of public peace and order. Okay. So in a district, the police and the administration, they work in tandem, they work in coordination and collaboration with each other to achieve these objectives, to achieve public peace and order, to ensure that the fruits of development basically reaches all.
Yes, sir. Sir, most of the aspirants score less marks in UPSC essay paper, sir. Could you please suggest some tips as to how essay paper has to be written, sir?
I think I discussed that during the course of my presentation, how to prepare for essay. Okay, I already told that essay basically has 2 parts. Essay preparation basically has 2 parts.
Okay.
The content part and the presentation part. I told you how to basically go about the content. What are the things that you should keep in mind while generating content for essay? Basically identifying of different themes which UPSC asks on a regular basis and generating a content of around 3,000, 4,000 words on those themes. And as far as the presentation is concerned, I discussed about the introduction part, how to write introduction. Okay, you can use quotes, you can use anecdotes to write a catchy introduction. What are the things that should be kept in mind while writing the body of the answer? How different dimensions should be covered? Okay, quoting facts and statistics and current examples. Focusing on solutions. Okay, even if the essay might be provoking, the topic of the essay might be negative. Okay, but you always have to give solutions. You always have to focus on solutions. Okay, and finally writing a futuristic and an optimistic conclusion.
So what was your optional subject, sir? And can you share your strategy for a UPSC optional subject, sir?
My optional subject was public administration. As far as the strategy for public administration is concerned, see, in any option paper, there are 2 parts, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is generally the theory part, and paper 2 is the part that relates to India. For example, in public administration, paper 1 is theory and paper 2 is Indian administration. Similarly, for sociology, paper 1 is theory, paper 2 is Indian society. Okay. So, as far as some of the general principles that should be considered while preparing for optional is that, first of all, you should not create an artificial compartmentalization, artificial distinction between paper 1 and paper 2. This is a very common mistake that most of the aspirants do. So in paper 1, while you're writing the theory, the examples will come from paper 2, which is the Indian part, the Indian administration, or the paper that relates to our country, what is happening in our country. Similarly, while you're writing answers for paper 2, you have to link the examples of paper 2 or what is happening in our country to the theory part. Okay, so there has to be you have to follow a systems approach. You have to integrate different topics of paper 1 and paper 2. Okay. Secondly, as far as answer writing is concerned, the principles of answer writing in optional as well as GS remain the same. Okay, as I discussed for GS answer writing, the same principles would apply for optional answer writing also. There has to be an introduction, there has to be a body, there has to be a conclusion. The body should be multidimensional. It should have facts and statistics and examples. You have to focus on solutions. always you have to focus on solutions. Plus for optional, you have to make your own notes. Okay, for GS, even if you are not making your own notes because the syllabus is so huge and it's not very well defined, so it's not possible to make notes for each and every topic. But for optional, you have to make notes for each and every topic that is mentioned in your option syllabus. In fact, I forgot to say this earlier, optional is one of the most important things that you have to take care of if you want to crack this examination. Because in optional, the input output ratio is good. That is, if you put in a minimum amount of effort, okay, you can be fairly sure that you will get a minimum amount of marks, minimum number of marks, which is not true for GS, because GS is so unpredictable. Even, I mean, you cannot be certain that you'll be able to attempt all the questions or you'll be able to score well in GS. But in optional, if you prepare well, if you put in the required effort, okay, if you practice answer writing, you can be fairly sure that you will be able to score well. So you should try to maximize your marks in optional. Okay. So for this, what you need to do, first of all, you need to make your own notes for each and every topic. Okay, preferably online notes because they can be edited more easily as compared to physical notes. Okay, second thing is revision and answer writing, which I told for GS also. For option also, revision and answer writing is the most important. Okay, and third is writing tests, writing test for optional. It is extremely important uh, for self-assessment and for identifying areas where you are weak, where you are committing mistakes. So if you follow these general principles, optional can be taken care of. As far as like strategy for public administration or any specific option is concerned, I think it's an entire session in itself. So I won't go deep into how to prepare for different topics within public administration. But these are some of the general principles that you can follow.
Sir, what should be the working professionals, sir?
While working, who prepare for this examination while working. It's completely possible and it's very doable. Personally, I left my job and I wanted to give 100% for UPSC preparation. That's why I left my job and started preparing for UPSC. So personally, my suggestion would be if you are if you are financially in a position to do so, you should do so, because UPSC is something which is a full-time job in itself, which requires your 100% attention, time and effort. Okay. But if for some reason you're not in a position to do your job, okay, then also it can be done. It is very doable and many people do it. Okay, but you'll have to manage your time more judiciously, more efficiently and more effectively as compared to others who are not working. Okay, so for instance, reading newspaper. So you'll have to read a newspaper while working only, in your office only. Nowadays, the benefit or the positive thing is that everything is available online. So even during your work hours, okay, when you have some free time, half an hour, 1 hour in the afternoon, okay, you can read newspaper, you can read online materials, you can read online current affairs. Okay, you'll have to put in, again, for working professionals, it would be a bit more difficult. You will have to put in those extra hours in the morning or at night after coming from your job. Okay, so a bit of extra effort would be required, but it's doable. Plus, during work hours, whatever time you can spend on reading newspaper and current affairs, you should do that. Yeah, that's it.
Sir, can you tell us why did you choose IPS as career, sir?
I chose civil services as a career, okay, because in the detailed application form, basically there are more than 20 services and you rank those services and then you're allotted a service on the basis of your rank and vacancies in different states. Okay, I chose civil services as a career because it provides an individual with the kind of opportunities that civil servants in our country, especially the kind of system that we have. In that system, civil servants have huge opportunity uh, to do good work, to do work which will have an impact on the lives of millions of people. Okay, the job satisfaction associated with civil services is unmatchable. It's incomparable. If you're working in the private sector, okay, you'll have a limited impact. Okay, but as a civil servant, every decision of yours, especially if you talk about all India services, if you talk about IAS or IPS, okay, once you're posted in the district, every decision that you take uh, will have an impact on the entire district. Okay, and the kind of opportunities that you'll get to do good work, okay, to work for the welfare of the people, to work for the empowerment of the marginalized sections of the society, it's incomparable, it's unmatched, not just in India, across the world. Okay, so yes, see, one needs to understand that uh, one can contribute irrespective of the fact whether you are in the civil services or not. Okay, even in the private sector, they contribute in the process of nation building in their own way. If you are part of the civil society, NGO sector also, NGO sector, etc., you are contributing in your own ways. If you are part of the media, you are contributing in your own way. Okay, but if you're part of the civil services, you are having a much more direct and tangible impact as compared to other sectors, as compared to other areas. So that's why I chose civil services, so as to have a more direct and a more tangible impact uh, on the lives of the people around me.
So we are extremely thankful to you for being available for this webinar in spite of your hectic schedule, sir. We are sure that the insights and experience shared by you will inspire, many students and aspirants. Thank you for your time, sir, and we wish that we conduct more of this free sessions to students in near future, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
This video is brought to you by AKS IAS.